The most industrially advanced city in the Ottoman Balkans. That's what they used to call Salonika. This Greek city was a place of refuge for those fleeing the Inquisition and quickly became a major center of Sephardic Jewry in the Ottoman Empire. The port was even closed on Saturdays, as the Jews were overwhelmingly the people who owned and worked there. And then World War II came. Here, we're going to tell the story of this community through a look at one of its members, Bouena Sarfatty Garfinkle. Born in 1916 to a soon-to-be single mother, Bouena was one of 6 children. When Bouena was about 3 years old, her father passed away, leaving the oldest child, Eliyahu, to become the new head of the family. Eliyahu was the only boy, followed by 5 sisters, Bouena being the second to youngest. Bouena was educated like her sisters. She even spent time in Marseille studying with a couturier and became fluent in French, Ladino, and Greek. But I guess that was standard at the time. Anyway, back in Salonika, she appeared at debutante balls from the age of 18 and enjoyed the exciting city life. Hers and her family's socializing crossed over to social causes as well, as they were involved in Zionist organizations like Keren HaYesod. But when the Nazis invaded in 1941, things began to change in the city. The one thing that didn't change was the family's involvement in social endeavors. Bouena and her sisters volunteered for the Red Cross, handing out soup to the hungry. And where there's food, there's talk. For you see, starting in 1942, Jewish men were taken to labor camps, and word would pass through the Red Cross kitchens. Bouena became a source of information for mothers, wives, and children wondering where the men were. In fact, Bouena was a source of information not just for women of her generation, but for us to this day. She wrote many Ladino komplas in which she documented valuable information about daily life in Salonika before and during the war. Let us take a brief break from our regular programming to explain a bit. A copla in Spanish is a quatrain or a 4-line stanza, usually with a rhyme. Bouena used the term Kompla to describe a kind of toast, often improvised at the Shabbat table. Because komplas are generally short and simple, one can easily imagine families sitting around the table and taking turns improvising them, or people quoting them later. The topics included everything from light, even satirical comments on daily life to more serious topics. And now back to Bouena. In some of the more serious komplas, she describes the circumstances in Salonika in World War II, and particularly her run-ins with a Jewish collaborator, Vital Hasson. Like this one with her close friend Sarah.
Sarah se casó con el hermano de Hasson. El padre achetó porque se espantó. Hasson le dijo que este casamiento se va a hacer o tus hijos van a desaparecer. La jupá se hizo con flores y una limusina, una hermosa limusina. Pasearon a los novios a las calles del Barón de Hierro. Vivamos a la salud de Sara, que se casó con un antisemita.
In another dramatic turn, after the Nazis entered Salonika, the Greek army fell apart and Bouena had a run-in with Vital. At the time, she and her fiancé Chaim decided they should marry and flee. Bouena arrived at the Midrash where they had agreed to have the chuppah, only to find Chaim shot dead at their intended wedding site. Bouena herself was arrested and taken to the Pavlos Melas camp in northern Salonika, but an escape plan was soon set up by the partisans who she would soon join. You see, a partisan arrived at the prison, dressed as a German officer, drugged the guard, and wore the guard's uniform, and voila! Got her out! Bouena later learned that her savior was eventually caught, but luckily, she had managed to escape and join the partisans. As for the partisans, there were resistance groups throughout Greece, fighting back against the Germans and Italians who had taken over. And though they were not unified in their philosophy, for Bouena it was about saving lives above all else. Whether she was with the communists or the loyalists, Bouena felt a calling to help in any way she could. She posed as a cook, codenamed Maritza, in a German kitchen, and later helped smuggle children, many of them orphans, and others, to Turkey and the land of Israel. Bouena was determined to help her people no matter the risks posed to her life. And she didn't stop after the war. In June 1945, she returned to Greece, again posing as a kitchen hand. Only this time, she was a dietitian for the Palestinian Jewish Relief Unit of the UNRWA. And as for her real purpose, setting up an underground railroad for World War II survivors to Palestine. But you see, Bouena had unfinished business. A survivor herself, she was determined to find out what happened to her family and their possessions. She soon learned that her brother, sister, grandmother, and aunts had all been murdered in Auschwitz. And their belongings? Well, her brother had had the foresight to distribute them to friends and neighbors, although not all were eager to return them to Bouena after the war. In her diary she wrote, "A gentleman who was supposed to send Chaim and me to Athens after our wedding received me very well. Chaim had given him 1,000 gold liras. He gave me 10. He introduced me to his wife. His wife was holding a silver handbag in her hand. My eyes stayed on the bag. It was mine. Chaim's grandmother had given it to me. I said to the gentleman, 'For sure you forgot to return this bag to me.' He emptied the bag and gave it to me right away." Then, in 1946, she married Max Garfinkle, a fellow conductor on the Palestine Underground Railroad, and they moved to his kibbutz in Ashofet. But their time there was short, for Bouena felt that she was not fully accepted being a non-Ashkenazi outsider, even if she was a survivor of the same world war that decimated Ashkenazi Jewry. Where Salonika was the center of Sephardi Jewry, all of a sudden she was entering the Ashkenazi kibbutz life that did not accept her otherness. So in 1947, Bouena and Max moved to Montreal, where she spent the rest of her life. She wrote her memoirs, which tell her personal story and the story of a once vibrant Sephardic city in northeast Greece. For it was important to her that the world should know the beauty and destruction of the beautiful Salonika, as she told Dr. Judith Cohen in a Kompla dedicated specifically to her.
Judith Cohen, canadiana y no sefaradí, que se interesa la historia de Salónica. Vivamos a la salud de Elise, Linda y Judith, que se interesaron a este manuscrito. Mi nombre es Bouena Sarfatty, que se conocida en Montreal por toda Garfinkle.
Bouena died in 1997, leaving behind her story and the story and culture of her birthplace, Salonika. Through these writings and recordings, we remember a heroine committed to helping those in grave danger, even if it meant putting her life on the line.